there, I'm Becky from the Cary Library, and today I'm going to teach you a little bit about the art of needle felting, as well as show you how to make a cute and festive winter cardinal. For all needle felting projects, you'll need a foam board on which to work, a special needle, and wool roving. For this particular project, you want wool roving in red, orange, black, tan, and white. And a pair of scissors handy will also be very helpful. Needle felting is a fiber craft where you sculpt loose wool roving into different shapes using a barbed needle. Initially, the wool roving is loose and kind of looks a bit like cotton candy. When you're needle felting, you use your hands to shape the wool, and then you use the barbed needle to get the wool to stay in your desired shape. The barbs on the needle tangle the wool fiber, and over time, the fibers will tangle and tighten into a permanent shape. In this first step, we're going to create the main shape of our cardinal, its head and its body. When I designed this project, I kept in mind the shape of a rubber duck. That shape is a bit more animated than an actual cardinal, but this simple cartoon aspect makes the desired outcome easy to visualize. So the main shapes we're looking for in this step are a round head that slopes slightly inward into a subtle neck, a puffed out chest, and a sloping back. Before we begin, we're going to take our red wool and set it into 3 different portions. A large portion for the body, then you'll want some smaller portions to make sure you have enough wool roving for your 2 wings and your tail. It is probably good to set an additional portion aside so that way you have some extras in case you make a mistake. Now, we're going to take our wool and create a kind of puffed out V shape where one end of the V is the head, the other is the rear, and then the chest is the middle of the V. We're going to make our full tail separately in the next step. So in this step, you won't be making the tail, just a basic rear end. Let's get started. Okay, so kind of shape the wool a little bit before you start felting to see if you think you have enough or if you need to add more. And again, we're going for that V shape. So this will be the rear end of our cardinal. This will be its head, and its chest will be right about there. And we're keeping in mind the general shape of a rubber duck as we get going. So you just start poking after you get the kind of shape that you want. You start poking it with the needle, and this tangles the fibers and starts to solidify your shape. As you're going, you want to kind of constantly move your piece around and work at different areas, so that way no single area is more defined than another as you're starting. This way, the whole thing is still kind of like malleable and at the same pace, so you can change things up as you go. So I will say something here. So once you kind of get this general rubber duck shape, now you can really start defining like that subtle neck where the head switches into the chest. And to work on definition, you just focus on a specific area more. So as I poke that specific area a little bit more, you can see it kind of starts to form a line. And then as I move down and around and go back up, that line is still defined, but kind of meshes in with everything else. All right, so at this point, he is looking pretty good, a lot less bumpy than how we started, and we have that rubber duck kind of shape. Here is his head, his neck, his chest, and his back. So one thing we're gonna add at this step is his poofy hair. So just take a little extra of the wool roving and kind of add that on top. I'm going to fold it back. Trim some of that off, but I'll end up working a little bit more on this when I do the face. But we're at a good point now to move on to our next step, which is creating the wings and the tail. You'll know that you're in a good place for the next step if, first of all, you like the shape. Second of all, a lot of those bumps that we started with have been smoothed out. And thirdly, depending on how firm your project is, it doesn't have to be perfectly firm, but you should be at a good point where there's just like a bit of squish left, not something that's completely hollow on the inside or falling apart. Okay, so let's move on to our wings and tail. Okay, so we are going to make the wings and the tail. We're making them detached and separate, and then we will attach them once we're done. So we're going to make them flat, and when you make something that's flat, you kind of felt it into the board, and then you pull it up, flip it over, felt it into the board again, and keep going back and forth until you have a solid shape that's flat and thin. It feels a little bit weird felting something into the board, but I found that this is the best process to make something that's flat. So when we're making our wings, we're going to start with a piece of wool roving, fold it in half. This gives us a nice rounded shape right here. That's going to be the top part of the wing. And then this loose stuff at the end gives us some room to play with to make something that's kind of feathery at the bottom. Okay. So we go ahead and start by just poking it into the board. And then here, when we get to the bottom, we can kind of play with that shape a little bit, make it look wing-like. And I'm just gonna snip this part off because that's extra and I don't need it. Oh, should also compare, because I just realized that my wing is going to be a bit too big for my bird. So I'm going to, before I get much further, snip off a bit more so I have a smaller wing. And that will be a better size. So once your shape is pretty good, you'll pick it up. You'll notice that little parts were kind of stuck into your board. Flip it over and work it a little bit more. To get some of this kind of like indentations here for the feather, you can push some of that inwards and poke it in and push and poke, and it makes a bit of a scalloped shape. Okay, so I kind of like that wing, and that'll be a good size for my bird. So we're going to repeat this process to make a second wing, and then do the same thing, but elongated to make our tail. So here we have our two wings and our tail. And when I was looking up cardinals online, I found out that they're really not all entirely red. Even with the male cardinals, they do have subtle hints of tan and black on their wings and their tails. So to kind of demonstrate this on ours, we're going to add some detail with tan and black wool. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. It just adds that extra detail and that pop, but it's really an optional step. Okay, so to accentuate this, what we're going to do is take our tan felt and kind of roll it into a line, then kind of trace where we want these details with this line of felt, and then use our needle to tack it into place. Okay, so you would add tan and black and then attach the tail and the wings. I'm going to attach plain wings and tails, so that way in the end you'll be able to see what it looks like with that detail or without. So we'll start by attaching the tail. Just put it where the rear end of your bird is, and you just tack it into place. Attaching the tail is pretty simple. Okay, then we're going to do the wings. You kind of want them, play around with the placement a little bit, but slightly to the back around the area where your bird's neck ends. I find that it's nice to tack it kind of in this center part too. That's what gave these wings that flare. And it looks nice if they kind of go over the tail a bit, so you get them all pointing down in that direction. All right, our last step is our bird's face. So we're going to start with this black triangle that cardinals have. On regular cardinals, it can be a little bit more organic and less of a straight triangle shape. Sometimes there's a bit of a curve around the eye, but I found that for this project, it looks best and cleanest to do a more geometric triangle. Then we'll add our eyes and our beak. So for that triangle shape, we'll use black wool roving. You can kind of shape it into a triangle in your hands. Then just place it onto your cardinal and start tacking it in. And while you're doing this, if you go kind of loosely to start, it gives you more wiggle room for making mistakes. Obviously that's a bit too much black, so we're just going to cut off some of the extra. When I do things like this, I like to define the outline by poking right on the edge of the shape. It gives it a crisp look. And then like these extra fuzzies, I can push them in towards the center and they'll just add more color to that center part. Okay, once you get your triangle, I think what we'll do is actually add the beak first and then the eyes. So to create your beak, just take the orange and kind of roll it up into a cone shape. Then put it on your board and poke it to solidify that shape. Be really careful if you're doing something like this so you don't poke your finger. I felt like mine's a bit thin, so I'm going to take this extra length, fold it in half, and add that to thicken it up. Okay, I'm going to use my scissors to trim off that little bit, but that will be my beak. Center it and on my triangle, and then use my needle to poke it into place. Just gonna refine that shape a little bit. And there's his beak. The eye will be a 3-part process where we do a layer of tan in a circle, a slightly smaller layer of black, and then white. So to do that, take some tan, roll it in your fingers to create a ball. Set it where you want it to be. You don't want to use too much right off the bat because you don't want it to be too big, but you can have it look a little bit bigger than maybe you intend it to end up, because once you place your ball, you poke it in and it will get a little bit smaller. Okay, Then you take black and you do the same thing. But you want to make sure that the black will end up being smaller than the tan, because the tan is the outside ring of the eye. Just go nice and slow for this part, because this is a bit of a fine detail. Okay, so then the white is really the thing that takes the eye and makes it look more realistic. It's like the shine that would be on a pupil in a picture. So we're going to add that. And you're going to take a very small amount, because this is really a tiny little speck. And sometimes when I'm doing things that are super tiny, I'll even put the felt right on the needle and then poke it into place. Though I think I want it to be even smaller than that. It's really just the tiniest bit. And for this, don't put it directly in the center of the pupil. It'll look best if it's more towards the top. That's a bit more where we tend to see those dots. Okay, once you get that done, you can do the other eye. Okay, so once you're done creating your cardinal, you can either leave it how it is in its basic shape. It looks more like a rustic craft, and if you like rustic crafts, then this is great and super cute. If you want to take it and make it more refined, basically all you're doing is adding those extra details and then just continuing to felt it and work it, and you'll smooth out all of these bumps and these extra fuzzies and make it look a little bit more solid, a little bit more realistic, but it's really your choice. Whichever version you prefer is perfect. Please feel free to share your final projects with the library on social media, as I personally would love to see how your cardinals turned out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks!